Welcome to our tutorial on creating a simple web application using web form with CRUD functionality. In this lab session, we'll be working with ASP.NET Core to build TinyTuts web app, which is a simple registration system. Get ready with your lab manual and Visual Studio, and let's get started. Since we're going to implement CRUD operations, we'll need to install SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio first. Please make sure you have done so. First, let's set up our project. Open Visual Studio 2022, then choose Create a new project. Make sure to choose C# language. Then, search for ASP.NET Web Application.NET Framework template. If you can't find the template, you need to modify your Visual Studio components. For those who can't find the template, I'll show you how to modify your Visual Studio components, or you can refer to step 3 in your lab manual. Let's close Visual Studio first. Press Window S to open a search bar. Then, type Visual Studio Installer. Once it appears, click on it to open the app. Visual Studio Installer window will appear. Click Modify to modify the components. After that, go to Individual Components tab. Make sure .NET Framework Project and Item Templates checkbox is checked. Then, click Modify button at the bottom right corner. The Modify button doesn't appear on mine, since I have done the modification before. I'll just close this window. Please proceed with the modification. It may take a while. After the modification is completed, you can launch Visual Studio. Repeat step 2. By now, you should see the ASP.NET Web Application.NET Framework template. Proceed to configure your project. Name the project as TinyTuts Web App. Then create the project. Choose Empty and tick Web Forms checkbox on the right side of the window. Click Create. Now, we're done with setting up the project. Let's proceed to the next section, which is setting up database. Alright, let's continue from the previous section. To work on database connection in ASP.NET, we have to install Entity Framework Package via NuGet Package Manager. One of the ways to install it is by using Package Manager Console, or shortened as PMC. To do so, go to the top menu of Visual Studio, select Tools, From the drop-down menu, select NuGet Package Manager. Then, select Package Manager Console. PMC will appear at the lower part of Visual Studio. We're going to run command to install Entity Framework Package. Type Install Package Entity Framework in the console. You can also refer to your lab manual. Then, press Enter to run the command. You should see a message like the one highlighted in the video. To verify the installation, you can expand References node under your project directory. Entity Framework should already be included in your project references. Great! Entity Framework installation has completed. Let's move on to the next step. In this step, we're going to create the data model. The purpose of data model is to organize how our data is structured and managed. The data model acts as a blueprint that defines the information we need to store, like names, dates, and other details. All you need to do is copy the provided code. Go to Visual Studio, right-click on Models folder, select Add from the drop-down menu, then select Class. Name the class as TinyTuts. After that, replace the already existing code in tinytots.cs with the one copied from the lab manual. Let me fast forward this part, since I just want to adjust the spacing. Next, we'll add the database context, which will serve as the bridge between our code and the database. It manages how our application communicates with the database, which allows us to query, add, update, and delete data seamlessly. You just need to copy the given code. Go back to Visual Studio. Create a class under Models folder. Just repeat the same step as you did when creating data model earlier. Name the class as TinyTutsDBContext. Replace the code in the just created TinyTutsDBContext.cs with the code copied from your lab manual. Alright, since we already created the data model and database context, it's time to configure the database connection. In this step, we're going to configure the connection string. Connection string is essential because it tells our application how to connect to the database. It contains the details like the data source, which is the server name, and the initial catalog, which specifies the database we're using. To do this, copy the provided code. Return to Visual Studio. Click on web.config file located under your project directory to open it. Paste the copied code within Configuration section in the file. Notice that there is a configuration to enable directory browsing included as well. It is done to prevent errors when running the application. This setting allows the server to list the contents of a directory if no default file is specified, such as index.html or default.aspx. Close web.config file and save the changes. Great. Now, we're done with setting up the database. Let's move on to the next section. This section is about enabling migration and updating database. First, we need to connect to the server where our database is hosted. In this case, we're using local DB. This step establishes the link between our application and the database. To connect to the server, open SQL Server Management Studio. Make sure you have the application installed in your device. Once SSMS is opened, you'll be prompted to confirm the server name. Since we're using local DB, make sure the server name is set to local DB. You can copy the server name from your lab manual. Then, paste it in server name text box in SSMS. Set the authentication to Windows Authentication. Under Connection Security, tick the Trust Server Certificate checkbox. Then, connect to your server. Next, we're going to enable migration and update database. To achieve that, we're going to run command via PMC. There are 3 commands to be run: to enable migration, to add migration, and to update database. Let's return to Visual Studio. Since we've opened PMC earlier, PMC will be at the lower section of Visual Studio. Run the first command, which is enable migrations. You can also refer to your lab manual. Migrations allow us to manage and apply changes to the database schema over time. Now that the first command is executed, let's proceed to run the second command, which is add migration initial migration. This step captures any changes we've made to our data model and prepares them to be applied to the database. Second command done. The third and last command is to update database. This step applies the changes from the migration file to the actual database. Now that we have updated the database, let's verify the changes in SSMS. Please refresh your server first by clicking on Refresh button to ensure the latest changes will be reflected in the database. After refreshing, expand Database node. Then, expand TinyTutsDB. After that, expand Tables. You should see TinyTuts database object created within TinyTutsDB. Great. Now we're done with migrations and successfully update the database. With that, our project is now ready for CRUD operations, which we'll dive into in the next section. Now that our database is set up, let's implement CRUD functionality. Create, read, update, and delete operations. These are essential for managing data in our application. Let's begin by adding the code for the create operation. Create function allows us to add new records to the database. The code is already provided in your lab manual. You can copy the code first. Then, return to Visual Studio to create a web form. To create it, right-click on your project directory. Select Add. Then, choose Web Form. Name the web form as the Register Child. Once the web form is created, you should see registerchild.aspx is added to your project directory. Paste the code copied from lab manual. Now that we've finished the front end, let's work on the back-end code that will handle the logic behind Register Child web form. When you create a web form in ASP.NET, the back-end code file, known as the code behind file with the .aspx.cs extension, is included by default. This file allows us to write the server-side logic for the form. Click on registerchild.aspx.cs to open it. Copy the code behind from lab manual. Then, paste the code in registerchild.aspx.cs. Don't forget to include using directive at the top section of the code. I've also included the using directive in the lab manual, so that you can refer to it. Basically, the code in registerchild.aspx.cs is used for performing create operation that adds new records into the database. Next, we're going to test the create functionality within our application. Let's run the application. To run, click this button. It'll take a while to run. And that's how our application looks like. Let's test the web form by entering new data and submit it through the form. This also will take a while. After you've done with registering new child, let's verify if the database is changed. To do so, we're going to run some SQL queries in SSMS. I've also provided the queries in your lab manual. Let's go back to SSMS. In SSMS, click on New Query. Once the text editor is ready, execute the queries from Lab Manual. To execute the query, highlight the one you want to execute. Then, click on Execute. And there you can see the data that I've entered is there in the database. Well done, Create operation is successfully implemented. Let's move on to the second operation, which is read. Let's stop debugging first. In this step, we're going to create another web page within our application that will retrieve and display data in the database. Let's copy the given code. Return to Visual Studio to create a new web form. Name it as Registration List. Then, paste the copied code from Lab Manual in registrationlist.aspx. Next, we're going to add the code behind for registration list page that will handle the data retrieving and display the data. Let's copy the provided code. Then, paste the copied code from Lab Manual in registrationlist.aspx.cs. Next, we're going to add several new data into the database through SQL query. Copy SQL query provided in Lab Manual. Then paste it in SQL query script in SSMS. Execute the query you've just pasted. Execute Select Query again to view the current database. Let's test read functionality if the app can read these data. Run the application. And there you can see the app retrieves data and displays it successfully. All right, let's proceed to the next operation, which is update. Let's stop debugging first. Now, we want to create edit registration page that will be redirected from edit link in registration list page. First of all, we have to include edit hyperlink in registration list.aspx that will be placed at every row. Let's copy the code first. In registration list.aspx, within columns section, paste it at the end just below food allergies. Adjust the spacing and indentation. This hyperlink will redirect to edit registration.aspx that will be created later. Let's proceed to create Edit Registration page. We have to create another web form that will specifically handle update functionality. Return to Visual Studio to add a web form. Name it as Edit Registration. Copy the code given in lab manual. Then paste the code in Edit Registration.aspx. Next, let's add the code behind for Edit Registration. Copy the provided code from lab manual. Then paste the code in Edit Registration.aspx.cs. Let's run the application to test update functionality that we've implemented just now. Here is our Edit Registration page. Since we don't have default page, the first page that appears after running the app is the page that we run from in Visual Studio. Let's test if the edit link will redirect to this exact page. Navigate to Registration List from the top navigation menu. Notice that Edit Hyperlink is added to every record in the list. Let's edit one of these data. And yes, the link navigates to Edit Registration page. I want to edit the food allergies information. Then, save the changes. You can also see the changes that you've just made in the list. With that, update operation is successfully implemented. Let's stop debugging and proceed to the next operation, which is delete. For delete operation, you also need to modify a little bit registration list.aspx to include delete link that is associated with delete method that will be created later to handle delete functionality. Copy the code provided. In registration list.aspx, a grid view line with several parameters. Paste the copied code right after empty data text parameter. This will link delete method to delete link that will be added after this. Then, copy another code from lab manual. Paste it after edit hyperlink in registration list.aspx within columns section. Alright, it's going to finish soon. Let's modify registration list.aspx.cs by adding another method that will handle delete functionality. Copy the code given. Then, paste it in registration list.aspx.cs, just below bind grid method. With all of these done, let's run the application to test delete functionality that we've just implemented. OK, we can see the delete link now. Let's delete one of these records. And there, one record is deleted. Let's just verify if the data in the database is also updated and deleted as well. Go to SSMS. Execute the select command again. And yes, the data that we edited earlier is also updated. And the database has no record of what we've deleted earlier. That's all for this tutorial. Well done. You've done so well until the end. Hope you enjoy this tutorial and thank you for watching. Goodbye and have a nice day.